Morning. It's a little loud. Matt and I know we're going to have a great session today. It's 10 o'clock, so we've all had 3 or 4 of our prerequisite coffees. Except me, I don't drink coffee. Don't tell anybody, I might get kicked out of Seattle. We also are going to share a bunch of fun memes, none of which involve Miley Cyrus. So I think we're going to be good. So Come At Me Bro. We selected Come At Me Bro, and just want to give a little bit of background. Come At Me Bro is from that paragon of American television known as Jersey Shore. And it quickly spawned, the show aired in 2010, quickly spawned an internet meme that we're going to show you a few of them just so you get a flavor. You don't have to be very big to issue a challenge, issue the Come At Me Bro challenge. Sometimes it doesn't work out so well. It didn't work out for William Wallace, didn't work out really for Mel Gibson either. And can you imagine what American history would look like if instead of the Declaration of Independence we had sent this to England? It'd be a little bit different, I think. So there's a key personality trait, though, that you have to sort of issue a challenge like Come At Me Bro. Anybody want to take a guess at what that personality trait is? Not all at once.
Aggressive, somebody said?
Aggressive.
What else?
Confident. That's exactly what we're looking for. I think as brands, we tend to not have a lot of the confidence to challenge our critics online. The typical response today is, let's pull out the standard messaging, and go back to that, right? But you cost too much. Well, we deliver a great value. It's just not resonating, I think, with consumers and with our customers and our target audiences the way we want it to, and the way it did through traditional media. So in social media, we need to take a different tact, and we think we can take a much more aggressive tack and tone when we present ourselves and our brands to the audience. For example, I'm 6'4", about 10 feet on this stage. I feel pretty confident in my physical abilities to challenge any one of you to a fist fight. And that increases, especially when I'm standing next to this freak of nature over here.
Yeah, well, hello. In addition to Freak of Nature, the other title on my business card is VP Technology. So with Rob, together we manage the technology practice for Porter Novelli Seattle. My biggest role is to look after our product reviews program, where we basically try to increase the volume and the quality of product reviews for a number of clients, HP, Alcatel One Touch, which is a handset and mobile device manufacturer, as well as Hitachi. In addition to that, I've also had the great pleasure to be on the team that supports South by Southwest Interactive. Porter Novelli is the agency that does PR for that conference and has for almost a decade. So in addition to sort of trying to drive news coverage and other awareness around South by, I've been down there the last 3 years as part of a team that's essentially covering it for our own social media properties for the company, so blogging, tweeting, etc. So it's exciting to see from that vantage point how much SIC has grown. I was here for SIC 1 the first year, and it seems to be getting better and bigger every year. So it's exciting to be here to speak today.
And I'm Rob McMurtrie. I'm Senior Vice President at Porter Novelli, been there for 14 years, and got an opportunity to work on a number of technology brands, HP, T-Mobile, F5. One of my proudest achievements was driving a lot of the initial adoption of MP3 music with the work on the Rio MP3 player. May it rest in peace.
Everybody's got their Rio with them, right?
That's right, yeah.
HP Rio.
So if you're enjoying digital music, you're welcome.
All right, so to start off, we talked about confidence. Yes, it's important to be confident in addressing your online critics, but as this example shows, confidence is not all you need, right? This person is clearly confident. This is an example of somebody that responded to online criticism very aggressively and confidently, but we would argue not very effectively. So the rest of what we're going to talk about today is how to kind of back that confidence with good planning and strategy. And how you can be more effective than Amy's Baking Company was. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just planning a little bit, so how you can be prepared. go ahead and just, yeah. We'll talk about owning the forum for response. We'll talk about framing the conversation. We'll talk about activating your stakeholders. And then finally, like every good trade show presentation, the last one will be about having fun. So when it comes to confidence, I know that I'm much more confident being prepared. If this was the first time I had seen these slides or thought about this topic, I would not be very confident up here. So one of the first things we want to talk about is planning. And when it comes to preventing a social media crisis or being able to address your online critics, planning ahead of time is crucial. Similar to how you would prepare for a natural disaster through very intensive interdepartmental planning, similar to how you would prepare for do crisis communication planning for when things break in the traditional media. You need to approach social media the same way from a PR perspective. So, you know, and there's probably thousands of agencies out there, marketing agencies, advertising agencies, PR agencies, digital agencies who have strong points of view on the best way to plan for a social media crisis. All that stuff's probably very good, but for the purpose of the discussion today, I want to just share kind of 3 major principles that kind of kickstart your thinking and then give some context for some of the examples we're going to share. Really believe that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to having a social media crisis plan in place. Every company's different, every business is different, every organization's different, how they use social media is different, and that's ultimately going to dictate how they're going to respond when they get challenged by online critics. So the first piece is getting the right people involved. Seems to be kind of a ongoing discussion, as most of you probably know, about where social media should live within an organization. And while I'm not going to say I think it should live in X department over Y department, what I will say is the companies that are effective at managing crises that emerge on social media have all of these departments represented. Or if you're a small or mid-sized company, another way to think about this, if you don't have specific departments for these are the lenses you need to look through when you're putting together your social media plan. Start with HR. Crucial to have HR involved because in a crisis, a lot of times you turn to your community, to your supporters, and employees a lot of times can represent that community and help engage in online discussion when you're being attacked. Similarly, employees need to know what the company's protocols and preferences are for using social media to make sure they don't start a crisis by releasing competitive information or misrepresenting the brand, etc. So important to have HR involved. Customer service, that one should be pretty clear. Customer service should have the best perspective on the customer. Some of these attacks may have originated from a customer service complaint, blown out of proportion, grown into something else. So customer service, having them there, making sure they're thinking of the voice of the customer, very important. Legal, nobody likes to invite legal to the party, to the planning meetings, but definitely from experience, I can tell you, you want to be putting the legal practices in place ahead of time, making sure that you know what the FCC regulations are around disclosure and use of social media and all of these things ahead of time, rather than sitting on the phone paying $500 an hour with counsel in the midst of a crisis. So marketing, it's the voice of the brand, right? And I think a lot of companies today, still social media is maybe solely owned by marketing, which is good for some things, but really isn't good at necessarily dealing with a crisis. So it's important to have marketing involved to represent the voice of the brand. And then finally, corp comms, working in PR. Obviously we're biased, but when a crisis like the ones we're going to show you breaks, it's important to have the same sort of principles that you'd apply to working with the traditional media in making sure that your message is well written, is on brand, etc. So these are the folks that we would suggest you get involved when doing social media planning for your company. I'm always amazed that we work with really large organizations, we work with startups, we work with mid-size, and across all of those segments, it really varies for which companies are doing this and which aren't. So, and the final piece of the puzzle is you. If you're here today, obviously, you have a stake in social media for your company. So, would encourage those of you to, to be a catalyst. If there's not a social media crisis plan in place at your company, to be a voice to change that, because doing this work up front can really help you and your company out down the line. Second piece, with the right people all on board on the planning team to build your plan, the second thing is to just do an honest assessment. You may need to bring in a third party to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, there's lots of pockets of expertise around social media, people that can come in, do an audit, but essentially what this is just taking a really hard look at, which social media channels are we engaged in. If you're a big brand, just because you have 20,000 Facebook followers doesn't mean you have created a community. So it's important to take a hard look at all those things. Which channels are you engaged in? Which channels are you not? Staffing. Do you have a good mix of digital natives who understand social media and sort of it's inherent in how to speak in that voice, as well as experienced writers who can write content quickly, that's on message, that fits with what the company wants to portray to the public. So take a hard look at what you have and if there's some capacities you need to build. For example, we had a client who was attacked by a YouTube video, and we activated our plan. We looked at it with him. We decided we wanted to respond through the same channel. So we were going to respond with a YouTube video. You don't want to be putting an RFP out for video services when you're trying to quickly react to a crisis on social media. So deciding these things ahead of time and getting those capacities built so that you're prepared to move quickly is really important. And then the third thing I'll share about planning is just once you have the right people involved, you've taken a look at an honest assessment of where you're at. The third thing is to put protocols in place. This is kind of an eye chart. Somebody told me they actually saw this in another presentation, but I put it up as an example of the level of depth in planning and thoughtfulness that folks are putting into social media planning. But basically, at this point, you want to ask yourself the questions and put roles and responsibilities in place. So who's monitoring the conversations on which channels? What constitutes a discussion or a post or a tweet from somebody that needs to be raised to a larger group? Once that happens, what are the roles and responsibilities in building a response? Which channel are we going to use to respond to which types of inquiries? Those types of questions you want to ask and get in place in your plan ahead of time so that when crisis hits, you're not figuring this all out on the fly.
Yeah, I had heard, I wasn't in the Tim Keck session yesterday, but I heard from folks that he talked a little bit about the apology that they issued a couple months back for some of the content they posted that folks found offensive. Well, one of the things I think about putting protocols in place and understanding is mapping that back to your brand, right? If Tim, I think, rightly admitted that was probably a mistake for them to do that because their brand is built on being an unapologetic humor site, right? They take aim at everybody, they taunt everybody, and they target everyone. And so for them to come out and then issue an apology, invited more critique from people, a different audience, obviously, right? A different audience than got involved, and they got a lot of negative feedback from that audience because they had come out and done something that they felt was contrary to their brand. So those are the kind of decisions I think that have to be made early in the process when you're putting the protocols in place. Is are we a brand that is going to apologize because that's in our DNA, or is that something that we're going to not do, or how are we going to apologize, or when or where? All those kind of decisions I think have to map back to what is your brand essence? What are you promising the customer?
Yeah, it almost feels like they acted out of character, right? And planning ahead of time can help you figure out how to stay in character when you're in the midst of a crisis.
So I love this meme. This come at me bro image I think is great. I mean, you look at that swan and you sort of know exactly how this is going to end, and it's probably not going to end well for the swan. And that brings us to our next point, which is that you need to own the forum for response. The swan here has decided to challenge the truck on the truck's turf, the freeway. If the swan had decided to fly over the truck and maybe drop something on the windshield, that might have been more, turned out better for the swan in the end. And I think that's the same true for brands. The Birkenstock brand is one that's, I think, well beloved here in the Northwest, sort of typifies our approach to life and represents what we believe in here. We worked on an issue for them in Germany. They were trying to relocate a manufacturing facility about 500 kilometers away, and obviously that meant that there was going to be some impact on the employees. Before they were able, it's sort of the classic internal comms challenge, before they were able to communicate with those employees, the news leaked. And so the employees, rightly so, fairly upset about learning that they potentially could be losing their jobs through the news media as opposed to directly from management. They organized quickly. They put together this Facebook page. I'll translate for you. The sign there says, Birkenstock wants to destroy 281 jobs. And quickly, within about 3 weeks, they had 1,800 likes on this page. Over 1,800, about 1,880, I think, likes on this page within 3 weeks. And a lot of momentum started building. Obviously, this is not a social media crisis on a global scale, but for Birkenstock, this was important, and for the management of this plan, it was important. The site became a lightning rod. Created a lot of misinformation, right, because the employees didn't have all the information that the company had prepared to communicate to them. It also included a lot of vitriol, right? People are angry, they're going to lose their jobs, they're lashing out. And Birkenstock needed a way to respond to this in the right way. Now, they could have gone onto the site, and posted a comment and said, here's our response. But they'd be doing so putting their comments in the context of all this anger and all this misinformation. They'd be, anybody who came there would be, reading a lot of other comments accusing the company of bad acts. And they would not get the response they wanted. And so by looking at the comments, not only was there sort of the underlying anger about losing their job, but there was this underlying anger about sort of not having a transparency to the communication and not having a engagement in the dialogue with management. And so what we did was we created a separate website to post the company's response and invite Q&A. And the Q&A was very open. They took any question and they answered all of them, and they posted all of them to the site to try to rehabilitate the initial misstep of the information leaking. Even though it wasn't entirely the fault of the internal comms team, it was leaked by a third party. So the result was tremendous. What happened in the next 7 weeks? So the first 3 weeks, 1,880 likes of the page and a lot of dialogue. The next 7 weeks, you can see here we're up to about 1,932. So about 50 more likes, and the conversation has dropped off tremendously. There's only, I think, 5 new posts since the company's response went public. And so they successfully captured and pulled away the conversation from this site that was going to cause them problems, that was going to continue and perpetuate a negative dialogue. They put it into an open forum. The other benefit, I think, of owning the forum is that you can understand more about the customer's reaction. So in the case of Birkenstock, they own the website. They can look at the web traffic. They can understand where that traffic is coming from, so that they can know where is the issue propagating into other sites. Are there other areas that, are there journalists that we need to brief because they're driving traffic to our site? They can also look at where a customer is going. What questions have been left unanswered that the customer now is leaving the site to go seek out? And can we capture that and bring that information onto our portal to help continue to own that dialogue and manage that dialogue in the right way? So a very successful approach here by Birkenstock to addressing the core challenge, the miscommunication, and bringing that into their own forum, and then learning, by owning that forum, learning more about how they can serve that customer base or that target audience base and their information needs.
Excuse me. All right. Talk now about planning, about owning the forum. Want to talk a little bit now about framing the issue. And the example we're going to use here is the Alec Baldwin American Airlines event. For those that haven't heard, I'll recap it quickly. Alec was on an American Airlines flight. Flight attendant walked by, said time to power off the device for takeoff. Didn't do it. Second time, please power off your device. Didn't do it. Third time, snuck into the bathroom to finish his game with Words with Friends and got into a verbal confrontation with the flight attendant. And they eventually called security and he was escorted off. And he relatively quickly issued a tweet kind of, complaining and damning American Airlines that reached 5 million people through his following. So that quickly, American Airlines had a social media crisis, the kind we're talking about preparing for, on their hands. And what they did really well in this situation is they framed the issue around what they really had a stake in. So Alec's tweet generated all sorts of buzz and comment and blog posts and media coverage around a lot of issues. One was this issue of our celebrities treated differently. Was he singled out, or are airlines too lenient on celebrities? This whole discussion around the nature of celebrity, versus a common consumer. That was one discussion that was kind of happening. Another one was around, man, does playing Word with Friends really going to mess up this plane's systems? Which, I personally have wondered myself, right? It's like, what really is the risk? So that was another discussion that was happening. But both of those were discussions that American Airlines didn't really have a stake in and didn't really have much to gain in participating in. So what they did is they decided to frame the discussion just around the fact that their job as a carrier that's regulated by the FAA is to enforce the regulations as dictated by the FAA. So they really framed the issue around that point. They decided that they needed a little more space in text to be able to respond than Twitter. So they pulled the conversation over to Facebook, which I think was great. They didn't issue an official statement or put it on a corporate blog or put it out through a media statement. They kept it in social where it emerged, went to Facebook and posted a nice statement, basically stating, these are the regulations. We're beholden to the FAA to administer them, and we administer them the same way to all of our customers. So I think a really nice job and a good example of how they both, kind of own the forum and frame the issue in a way that they could be successful.
Yeah, I think it was really telling that Alec's response was to go on to Saturday Night Live and basically mock himself in the situation. He didn't really have, and he realized pretty quickly he didn't have a leg to stand on, in his complaint. And the way American approached it, they really diffused it and left out him the only avenue, which was to, he sort of mocked the pilot, he mocked American a little bit, but underlying that was really him giving up the story and giving up the power of that story, and his only response being, to go on Saturday Night Live and really make fun of the situation. So
the measure, the measurement, if Alec's tweet reached 5 million people, Facebook page got 20. The post that American made on Facebook got 28,000 comments, 38 million impressions. So they did a good job, not only sort of framing the issue, but in sort of capturing the folks that potentially had seen other parts of the conversation.
Elvis, obviously, very popular figure, celebrity, huge amount of fans, 167 gold albums. Elvis doesn't need to defend himself. One, he's dead, but two, if he had a social media
alive
crisis,
and well, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Elvis, I think the principle we can learn from Elvis is that if Elvis had a social media challenge, he wouldn't need to leap to his own defense. He has a huge fan base that he can tap and activate to generate the response that he wants, to defend him. And that's the core principle, I think, that we want to communicate to brands as well, is you need to find ways to activate your customers when you're attacked. They'll do the best job defending you. They're going to be the most believable and credible. They have the least stake in the game, which makes them more credible, and can really be a powerful force for changing perceptions about your brand. So HP has got an interesting challenge. HP sells ink, and it's not the sexiest product, but it is the core lifeblood of their organization. They make huge amounts of revenue off selling the ink. The problem is that a lot of people know that, And a lot of people feel gouged when they look at the price of an ink cartridge, maybe relative to, the price of this ink pen. This costs 2 cents. This, that little tank of ink costs, maybe $30, $40. And the problem is that there's a real lack of understanding of the value that HP is delivering. And it stems from a lot of things. But, one, if you really think about the retail buying experience for ink, you go into Office Max, you look at that huge long shelf of ink, and one, you don't even know what you're buying, which certain number you need, which ink cartridge number you need. But if you look at the HP product versus the generic product, there's a huge price difference there, right? And it can be $10, $15 at times. And you have no real understanding of what the product inside does. I know it delivers ink. I know it prints out a piece of paper, but what's the premium I'm paying for the HP over the generic? You can't test it there in store. Nobody's got printers set up and are printing out those things side by side. In fact, Office Max probably doesn't want you to do that because they sell an Office Max branded cartridge. You also can't buy both of those and bring them home. You don't really have two printers in your home. You're not going to stick them in and print them both off. You don't really care that much, to be honest. You want to get the output. You don't really care too much about how that happens. And then finally, you can't read an article about it. CNET's going to probably not cover ink over the new iPad. They're going to drive a lot more eyeballs.
Despite our best efforts.
Despite my best efforts. So you really have a challenge as a customer understanding, what am I buying? And so the natural default is, HP's gouging me. I don't understand the value they're delivering, so they're gouging me. And this is the problem that we've faced over the last couple of years, working with HP and on their behalf, trying to promote HP Ink. So we developed this platform, which we call the HP Ink Challenge. And you can think about this as sort of the modern-day transparent version of the Pepsi Challenge. So you remember the Pepsi Challenge from back in the 80s, great commercial. People come on, oh, I like this one better. Oh, it's the Pepsi. Well, we all know that probably shot 50, 60 consumers taking that taste test, and they picked the 3 best ones. So nobody had illusions that Pepsi Challenge was, an honest presentation of the facts. Here we have an opportunity, especially because of what social media allows and the transparency social media allows, to do something different, similar but different. In this case, we went out and we found consumers talking about ink, and it was challenging, but we found 100 of them. And there were some people talking about, refill. I love this, this refill product is so cheap. I don't understand why HP ink is so expensive. I feel like I'm being gouged. I love HP ink. Look at this great thing I just printed out with my HP printer. We went and we selected all those people, and we invited them into the ink challenge. And we provided them with 2 printers, and we asked them to test these. We provided them with 2 printers, and also we provided them with either HP ink or the means to buy refill ink. We wanted both. But we did that because we wanted to take price out of the conversation. We knew people could compare on price already. We wanted to be able to force a comparison on quality and reliability, which were the 2 factors that HP wins on, but that also you couldn't evaluate in the marketplace today. And so when we presented that opportunity to people, we had 100 people sign up. They then were asked to share their experiences in a centralized website that we built, but also then out through their own social media channels. So the people we invited all had some social media presence. They weren't the Twitterati. They didn't have millions and millions of fans, and we didn't really want that. We were looking for more authentic experiences by real consumers. Over the course of the challenge, so we've done this twice. Right now, there's one actually active right now. You can see the link at the bottom of the page. You can go to there and see that content. We did one earlier. The current one focuses on SMBs. We did one earlier focused on consumers. And the consumer, I want to share some results from both of those. The consumer side, we had tremendous participation. We had over 12,000 posts to our site by the 100 participants over the course of 6 weeks. A vast majority of them, I'd say now 90%, were positive to HP or on the messages that we wanted to promote. About 10%, we were hesitant. This is kind of the same. I'm seeing the same quality, or I like the refill better, or the HP's better, but it's still too expensive. Those kind of comments, and we were okay with that. primarily because we wanted to actually see some negative comments because we felt like it would increase the authenticity and the credibility of our effort. Right, again, back to the Pepsi challenge. If you know that all the Coke selectors hit the cutting room floor, how much credibility does that advertising have with you? It kind of decreases, especially in our current world. I mean, in 1980s is a different story, but today we're all really skeptical of brands. Trust barometer, for brands is really coming down, and so you're not as believable as a brand as you were in the past. So the other thing that we really learned out of the consumer version of this was we could impact purchase intent. So the participants in the program were about divided. About 50% had purchased Refill Inc. in the past year, about 50% had purchased HP Inc. in the past year. And we surveyed them leaving the challenge, and the results shifted dramatically. Only about 12% had a stated purchase intent to go buy Refill Inc. after they had tested this for 6 weeks. So we knew this had worked. We knew that, especially within the core audience that we're actually testing, that this was working. We were changing their purchase intent. And conversely, on the HP side, purchase intent went from about 50% to about 87% or so. So it really increased dramatically for us and did exactly what we wanted. So we're doing it again right now with small and medium-sized businesses. We're about 3 weeks in. We've got 300 posts to the site. We've got 303 posts to the site, 1.2 million impressions, and 11 blog posts have been published by the participants on their own social media properties. So we've really activated the whole community to go talk about this topic, and for the most part, by forcing the comparison on quality and reliability, the two vectors that HP wins on against their competition, remanufactured or generic products, we've almost pre-programmed it to be in our favor. Even though it's transparent, even though it's authentic, even though you can go back and look at any one of those people's Twitter handles and understand what their position was prior to the challenge and what their position was after the challenge, we definitely took steps to emphasize those factors that we knew HP would win on. So I think that's a great way to really take that opportunity to be transparent, but also defend the brand in the right way, or make sure that at least the right concepts get represented, right, and the right discussions get had in social media. So I want to show, before we move on, I want to show a little bit of video that shows how we're using this. So the nice thing here is HP doesn't have the credibility to talk about HP Inc., but they do have the marketing largesse to get it in front of a lot of people. And so what we're doing is, as we wrote our contracts with our participants, we asked for the marketing rights to their content. Anything they post on the site, we have marketing rights to. So we're taking that out and putting it into advertising. We're taking that out and putting it into HP's own social media channels. And we're creating other assets that we can use as we move forward, so that when 6 months from now we see that post on an article on CNET, or we see that tweet, we have an asset that we can take back to that person to educate them, right? So they're going to come in, they're going to attack HP, they're going to say that they think it's too expensive. We can show them something, and this is a little bit of what we produced.
Oh, hey there. I'm Tom Brown, HP Supply Specialist and your resident inkologist. Did you know that choosing the right ink can make a big difference on your prints? To give people the chance to see for themselves the impact ink has on printing, we invited 102 people to join us in the HP Inkology at Home Ink Challenge. The challengers were given 2 HP PhotoSmart printers, one using original HP ink, the other using third-party refilled ink cartridges, and a series of weekly assignments for them to print at home. Today, we're going to look at the quality of prints generated from various inks. Fact or fiction, ink is just colored water. Doesn't matter which ink I use.
I had a couple of photos up in my window here in my office. There are no trees outside. It's in direct sunlight for most of the day. And you can tell a distinct line in the photos where it faded with the refill ink. You couldn't see it in the HP original ink.
I think you'll see a big difference on that end, and a difference not only that you'll notice, but once you see it, if you use refill ink again, you'll be like, oh, these photos are terrible, and you just look at it because you'll know that there is something better that doesn't cost that much more.
The answer? Fiction. Not all inks are created equal. Our Ink Challenge participants by far prefer the quality of their photos and documents when using HP Ink. So would you. Based on the Ink Challenge exit survey, in which a total of 74 participants gave feedback, 94.6% preferred the quality of HP Color photos to the refill color photos. 95% were very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with their HP Ink text and documents. Only half were satisfied with those printed with refill ink. And 95% said that HP Ink provided more true-to-life colors. Refillers just can't replicate the results of original HP technology. So the choice is yours. Save a few bucks up front with refill cartridges, or get great quality results every time you hit print with original HP supplies. This is your resident inkologist, Tom Brown. Till next time, happy printing.
So I think we need to start rethinking about how we produce content and how we use our marketing dollars. Today we use a lot of marketing spend on creating the content, right? Owning the content, owning the message, owning the story that we want to put forth. And there seems to be an opportunity at times to start seeding that to our advocates and really own the platform, right? Inkology, you saw the Inkology brand there. That's something we built to help tell that story. Owning the means to promote that. You know, HP's got that marketing largest, but they don't have the credibility. So we can we can put the message out there farther than Chase Hawkins can with his 1,000 followers. But we can use his credibility, adopt his credibility into our programming and then make it go large, make it go wide. So.
Yeah, one thing I love about that example is that guy you saw, Tom Brown, is, well, as you can tell, clearly none of those people are actors. But Tom's not an executive or an official spokesperson. He's just a person out in the business. And so what we did is we literally said, show us the nerdiest guy or gal you got who knows about ink, who would be willing to, participate in this. Gave him a lab coat, talked to him about ink to help inform the messaging, gave him a Twitter handle, and really built him up as the inkologist. So it was cheap from that perspective. There's no talent that need to be hired. More authentic, because this is a guy who really knows a lot about ink. And put him out on front of this in kind of a fun way. So, and I think that's the last point we wanted to make today is just to have a little fun. I think organizations need to remember the social and social media. It's not, corporate media. It's not bureaucratic media. It's not business media. Social means to interact with other humans for enjoyment. And so, if you're going to participate in social media as a brand, you have to look to your brand attributes and your brand and be able to bring some of that in a way that's going to, seem authentic and potentially entertain and engage people, or you're not going to be very successful.
So we have one last example of that, and it's another HP example, this time from the support group, HP Support. HP got this tweet from Matt Bennett. Matt Bennett is a Nickelodeon personality. At the time, back in March, he had about 400,000 followers. Now he has about 700,000 followers. And he sent this tweet, which I'm sure many of us have seen, or many of our customer support organizations have seen. He takes a little liberty with it, has a little fun with it, right? But it looks like, for all intents and purposes, he's asking for help from HP for a support issue around his printer. So HP responds. At HP is actually a marketing handle, so this got redirected to HP Support, which is the support handle. And they respond, Matt, what's the problem with the printer? And a little bit delayed, 2 days, but I don't manage sports, so I'm not going to comment. So Matt doesn't engage for a couple days. Yet he's continuing to tweet about this printer, and the tweets get a little bit more outrageous. But he won't, they're sending DMs, they're sending, they're publicly asking him to respond, they're reaching out in every possible way they can to get some more information about this problem. They know the printer, but they don't know exactly the core part of the problem. Is it not printing? Is there something wrong with the cartridges? Is there something wrong with the mechanism that's delivering the paper? What's wrong? And Matt's not responding. And this continues on for several days, and eventually support realizes that they're being trolled. Matt's, he's not doing it in a mean way, obviously. He's having a little bit of fun, but he's definitely trolling them because he's not responding. And so they realize, support quickly realizes, okay, this is an opportunity. Either we can shut down, okay, Matt's not responding, we're just going to ignore him, hope he goes away, or we can do something different. And so because HP had done a lot of the planning that Matt talked about earlier, support and marketing had a really good relationship. And support brought this to the attention of marketing. They're like, okay, guys, we're not exactly sure what to do with this. Matt seems to be having fun, but he won't respond to us, so what can we do? And marketing sort of continued to monitor the situation, and then you get about 2 weeks in, and literally Matt, I think, put 170 tweets together over the course of 3 weeks. He was obsessed with
Too
this
much
story.
time on his hands, right?
Yeah. Somebody get Matt a job. So now they see an opportunity, right? Matt is trapped in his apartment. What is he going to do? The man's going to starve to death. We got to help him. So HP decides that they're going to send him a pizza. And finally make contact with him through direct messages and get his address. And they follow through on this. They send him a pizza. And they have it delivered to his apartment. And Matt responds that we don't have the response. The response was in a direct message, but he was thrilled. He was like, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you sent me a pizza to my house. I think he's got a pet too, which, so Rex also, I think we sent him dog treats for Rex or something like that. But it was an opportunity that they did not, fumble, I guess, is the best way to put it, by figuring out a good angle to approach Matt. They delighted Matt. And really, when you think about this, an influencer campaign, if you had to pay Matt to do an influencer campaign on Twitter, you might have spent $50,000, $100,000 to get his access, to get 170 tweets. I mean, you might have spent $500,000 to get that much coverage from him. But here, we spent $15 on a pizza. Got exposure to all 400,000 of his people. And a lot of engagement. I don't have the tweets here, but a lot of engagement from his fans saying, hey, Matt, that's really funny. Are you trolling HP? What's going on here? He had built this whole story around this printer. They gave this printer a personality. It was great. There was a series of tweets where he talked about having a visitor come over, and the printer actually shrank back down to normal size. But then as soon as that person left, it grew again. So it was a very threatening printer. And we delighted Matt to the point where he ended this 3 weeks later with a Vine video that showed the printer pushing out a perfectly printed page. So at the end of the day, people understood, and Matt's fans understood, that an HP printer, and HP will work with you to get your printer working again. And it really ended well for them, and I thought it was a nice way that they realized that they didn't have to be stodgy HP, big corporate organization and deal with this in the typical way. They could have a little bit of fun with it, really find a great way to engage, take advantage of a personality who has, over 400,000 viewers, and execute an influencer campaign in a new way, just by taking advantage of an opportunity that seemed to present itself. So that's what I think we mean when we say have fun. Find those new engaging ways to really get at the customer base.
All right. So quick recap. I love that example because, like we talked about in Be Prepared, it showed, if that tweet from Matt had stayed in the customer service department, they'd probably still be trying to figure out root cause and maybe not have seen this tremendous opportunity to get the brand out. So the partnership with marketing there is a good example of that part of the planning process. Own the forum for response, like Birkenstock did. Frame the conversation, like American Airlines didn't get involved in sort of adjacent issues to what really they had a stake in. Activate your stakeholders. I guess Elvis is the reference point there, but just remembering that you have employees, you have partners, you have customers, you have a community, hopefully, that you've built through your social media channels that can be very helpful during a social media crisis. And then finally, don't forget the social in social media. So I think we got about 15 minutes left. We would love to hear what questions you have or comments. They've asked if you can come to the mic to ask the questions, then they will be recorded. So what can we answer?
Hi guys, thanks so much for coming up and giving some really great case studies. So for your Inkology project, I was curious from like idea conception to actual implementation, what did that timeline look like? Because oftentimes when you realize you have a kernel of an opportunity, there's either a very short window to activate or you have the luxury of timing, which it seems most PR people these days don't. So can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, it took a while. This was, for as much as many good examples are there from HP, that HP is still a big company with a lot of bureaucracy. And so to do what we wanted to do around planning, right, to be prepared and to involve all the stakeholders we needed to, it took us some time to get them comfortable with the idea, right? And I like to joke sometimes and take pot shots at marketing, but marketing response was kind of humorous because at the time I read it, my reaction to it was marketing essentially saying, what do you mean you want people to use my product? And that's essentially what we're doing. We're just providing people with product and asking them to use it and compare it. I mean, it's what we try to do. We try to get people to buy our products. Here we're providing it to them. But it did take a while to get those guys organized. This is a long-standing issue for HP, right? The cost of ink problem is not something new. It's a little bit like Starbucks and the cup problem or relative to environmentalists or some other of those long-standing underlying issues that sort of boil underneath the surface of the conversation. So the short answer is it took us a while. It took us a couple months to get everybody on board, everybody organized. There's quite a bit that went on behind the scenes in terms of getting legal on board to help us craft the right documents for the participants to sign to get access to the content. We had to work with the web team to get the right web property, navigate HP's rules around websites. In fact, one of the challenges we had was, as the PR agency, we had to find a way around helping Tom answer participants' questions, right? So as we invited the participants in, they would have questions about the product or things. Typically we would, represent Tom in those conversations and help facilitate that because Tom's got a day job. He doesn't have time to be answering all those questions. But HP's policies wouldn't allow us to do that as a third party. So we had to, find a way to work around those kind of issues. Another challenge we had was customer support. So we're putting out 200 printers into the marketplace. Probably going to be one or two of those that have problems, especially when you're using a generic third-party product in half of those. So we needed to have customer support involved and a customer escalation process. So we went through all those hoops with HP to get this into market. But because it's a long-standing problem for them, that wasn't as big as an issue as if you're having something breaking that you really have to get done quickly. And that's why I think the planning is important, right? You got to have that conversation. Do some role playing, some scenario planning with those stakeholders just to have that cadence together with them prior to a major social media issue breaking.
Yeah. Can you? I know you got it.
So you solicited video from those participants. Did you just ask for it via YouTube? How did you go about kind of capturing that?
Yeah, we did ask for webcam video, and for the first version of this, we didn't have the site enabled for them to upload video to. The second time we have enabled that, and so users can post those videos directly to the content site that we've created, and we can collect off that, and that's where we've collected a lot of the commentary that we're using in print advertising or social advertising or other areas. But yeah, we've simply used, I don't know if we used YouTube or Vimeo, but one of those services to collect that.
Can you touch on how any of this process changes when you're dealing with competitors as opposed to potential customers or people who have complaints about your product? Does that change anything for you guys and how you would respond in terms of transparency or ignoring it or whatever?
So you're saying when you're being attacked by a competitor through social media?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, as PR people, we would advise all of our clients not to attack their competitors in a public forum unless they were a challenger with a very specific point that they wanted to do battle on. But I think the same basic principles apply. If you're getting attacked in social media, you're getting attacked in social media, and you need to have those same perspectives on board when thinking about how we're going to respond. I don't know that there are specific things I would necessarily do different for competitors.
I think it also depends on whether it's a valid attack or not. If they're making a point to the marketplace, you're lacking this functionality or this key aspect to your product, and the market is demanding that. That's one thing. If they're being callous and catty and just trying to bait you into a negative conversation, I think the response is different there, right? You probably ignore it.
Using your own channels to make their marketing points, whether they're valid or whether it's delivered appropriately or not.
Yeah, I think that opens the door. I think that opens the door for counter messaging, right? So we understand that you offer this feature or functionality, but the marketplace doesn't demand that. You might use an example like I've got a HP tablet here, convertible tablet, right? That the market for that could be potentially positioned against an Apple product, right? An iPad or something. This convertible has a touchscreen. I can use it as a tablet, or I could use it as a laptop. If that's if somebody came at HP and said, but your product is too heavy to be a tablet. The iPad's much lighter. I think it would go back to against that and say, the marketplace is different. Your tablet experience is for this type of use, this type of consumer. This is targeted at more of a business audience who needs the flexibility of a tablet, but also the input characteristics necessary to use Word or PowerPoint or Excel, right? Which we all know from an Apple iPad perspective is not the best. Not the best. Apple doesn't have the best input for those devices. So there's ways I think you can turn that around on them by highlighting what the customer use case is for the product or service, and really deep position them, right? I mean, tell the audience where their product belongs in the marketplace and how that's different than where your product belongs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand differentiation. I just mean when they're coming into your space, there's but I know what you're saying. Thank you for that.
Anyone else?
Any other questions?
Each situation is going to be different, but in general, what are the metrics used to determine whether a campaign has been a success or failure, whether to cut your losses, or if you've won over the audience?
Rob happens to be the measurement guru for all of Porter Novelli, so.
I always try to go to the core underlying need, right? So we want to, in the case of the Ink Challenge, we wanted to influence purchase intent. We knew people were trying to purchase generic products, and we wanted to be able to influence their intent to buy HP products. So like you said, it's going to be case by case. But in an attacking situation, I think you want to be able to look at not only did I convince this person who was attacking me. Sometimes you don't even want that, or you can't even achieve that, right? If somebody is so diametrically opposed to what you're doing, I tend to advise folks to look at the silent majority, everybody else who's witnessing that conversation, right? So you and I are talking. That in social, the conversation now is not just me and you. It's me and you witnessed by everybody else in this room. And so if I can win everybody else in this room, I don't care if I lose you. And that's just to be blatantly honest about it. I mean, I know there are going to be people who I can never win in the marketplace, but if I can convince everybody else witnessing our conversation that that my position is right, especially if I can peel off, you're always going to be more credible with your audience than I am. When you attack me. So you have 1,000 Twitter followers, you attack me. Those 1,000 Twitter followers are going to believe you over me most of the time because they're your followers, they're not mine. But if I can peel off a significant portion of those who say, you know what, you're wrong on this issue, and Rob's right, then I've won. Because I've grabbed part of the audience that you were influencing negatively, and I've turned them to my cause. So I really think that, you have to define the metrics and you have to define the measurement vehicles, because the measurement vehicles are tough. How am I going to know if I won this argument or not, unless I put a survey out or I have some vehicle to engage you that tells me that you've been convinced. But in that situation, you have to realize that you're on the defensive to begin with. You pretty much lost your audience to begin with. So anybody you can get back is a win, and that's why I think we need to be more aggressive in attacking our critics online. Because by not attacking our critics online, not by not going back and addressing them directly, we're letting the audience just go away. We're letting that person take that audience wherever they want to go, and we're letting them create the narrative and control the narrative to their base of followers, their base of fans. So by engaging, it's almost a no-risk situation. I think a lot of people look at it as a risky situation. I look at it as a no-risk situation because you've lost everybody already. So now you're just bringing people back into the tent. And the more you can do that, the more you can engage that negative critic and win over his followers, the more successful you're going to be. Because the alternative is lose them all and let him control the narrative and the understanding of what your product delivers and the value your product delivers and the experience your product and service deliver.
I think we got about 3 or 4 more minutes, so if you have a question, you might want to just line up. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that a little bit, going back to own the form response in your Birkenstock example, you didn't have Birkenstock reply directly on the employee's page, but let's say somebody writes a media outlet writes a bad article about you. Would you recommend responding to that in that form or doing something else?
Again, I think it depends on, the nice thing about the media is they tend to be objective, or they tend to value objectivity. There are certain cases where that's not true, especially with blogs.
You got a really audible laugh when
Yeah.
you said that,
Yeah.
which I thought was great.
Blogs are a different story, right? Because there's definitely an emerging class of blogs that have a point of view and attack you. You're never going to win over Glenn Greenwald to believe that the NSA is not doing something that they shouldn't be doing. But for the vast majority of media, it's a different issue because they do value the input of companies. You can go to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal or a journalist at CNET, explain your position. We do a lot. Matt does a lot of this, I think, with the reviews program that he runs at Porter, where he'll go in and he'll talk to the journalist about the test scenarios. How is CNET testing a printer? How are they testing a mobile device? How are they testing an app? What's the right way to test those products? And he can have an honest dialogue, an open dialogue with them to change the parameters of that.
Yeah, I think the short answer is very rarely would we recommend folks, in what you're talking about is in the context of an article that's been published, responding in the comments to the content of the article. Yeah, I would say very, very rarely. It seems like more often than not, that's either going to sound offensive or it's going to clearly be, here's company coming on to give the official statement, and you'd be better served by, like Rob said, figuring out how you can change the perception of the reporter that wrote that or correct misunderstanding so that they're better informed for the next one rather than just continue to...
Or activate your followers. Yeah. I mean, we did that with the Ink Challenge. We saw some negative coverage later after the Ink Challenge. We asked those folks. We said, hey, did you see this article? Maybe you should share your experience with HP Ink to, in the comments. And they did. We had about 7 folks jump on and comment on that article, and it really swayed, I think, the conversation.
Time for one last question.
Yeah. Have you ever used this with a company internally, companies going through big change, transformation, as a communication device with their own employees, resistors, adopters, et cetera?
I have not, Matt. You've done a little more internal comms.
Let's see. In the internal comms experience that I have, we never let's see, I supported T-Mobile and I did internal comms for their business-to-business department through 2009. And we did have the company was then and continues now to go through a lot of change. We did not use social media as a channel to deliver information to them. Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, and also how might you have used it to head off or manage resistance when changes occur?
Got it. I think what we would have done differently and better was just at the time T-Mobile did not have good guidelines out for employees about the use of social media. So essentially all those critics and fans that we talked about, we had not created those advocates in T-Mobile and taught them how to use social media to help spread the accurate information as opposed to the stuff that happens naturally. So we really just had not created the capacity for it. And I think the organizations need to do that. You need to make sure your employees understand your social media policies, and the better informed you keep them so that they hear about it from you, not from the news media, the more likely that they're going to represent you well on those social media channels, I think.
Yeah, I think it's totally applicable. I think the channels will change, right? You may not use open social networks versus company intranets or private social networks, but the principles apply.
Well, thank you everyone for coming.